The atmosphere in this is so strong, I feel like my hay fever should be going crazy. Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today. And for this video, we are going to be doing a witchy romance 5x5. Alright, before we get into anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments what is your favorite witchy romance. Alright, so if you're new to this series, my 5x5 is a series of videos in which I am trying to find 5-star reads under a single theme. I haven't succeeded thus far. I've gotten pretty close a few times, but I'll put a link to my prior tries in the playlist up above. So this year, I knew I wanted to do witchy romances. I feel like these are really having a hot moment lately. More and more of them are coming out where it's a romance story with some sort of a magical realism or fantastical aspect. A lot of it still feels pretty contemporary, but you know, there's that witchy twist on it. As usual with my prior 5x5s, I am going to give you a summary of the book I'm going to be reading, followed by a 50% update with an estimated rating, and then a final update with an actual rating. First one I was super excited to get to, and that is The Honey Witch by Sydney J. Shields. First off, witchy romance, but it is sapphic with grumpy sunshine, one of my favorite tropes, and the grumpy character also is covered in tattoos. Say less. So in this one, we are following Marigold, who has recently taken on the role of being the Honey Witch from her grandmother. But a serious stipulation to this role is that the Honey Witch cannot fall in love. However, when 𝗖cie, a woman who does not believe in magic, comes to visit the island, things get a little bit more complicated for Marigold. As I said, I was insanely excited for this one, and even though the cover might be more springtime as opposed to Halloween, it's still a witchy romance. It still fits for the prompt. Hey y'all, I have hit the halfway point into The Honey Witch by Sydney J. Shields, and this is going really well, thank God. This book is peak springtime, which I guess you can tell from the cover. I mean, even still, I expected a little bit of fall vibe. No, honestly, I think Shields has excelled at creating this flora-filled island with all of the wonders that inhabit it. The atmosphere in this is so strong, I feel like my hay fever should be going crazy. It is homey and it is beautiful. It is completely enveloping. It actually kind of reminds me of Erin Morgenstern's writing when it comes to atmosphere. Obviously, with this being involved in this video, I also expected the romance to be at the forefront of the story, but it actually takes a little bit for that to be the focus. Probably the first 80 pages of the book is really more introducing us to Marigold and why she's willing to so easily give up that life in order to become the new Honey Witch. She has always felt out of place in this Victorian style setting that's been created. Love has only really ever brought her heartbreak and embarrassment. Honestly, I'm completely convinced by Marigold's character. That said though, it does make the pacing of this feel a little bit odd because probably, like I said, the first 80-90 pages, it both feels like nothing is happening and also so much is happening, but it's because there isn't really a lot of plot or romance. It's all focused around Marigold's character. Once we do meet the love interest, 𝗖cie, though, I was immediately suspicious of her. If I'm being honest, how she's going to play into the plot, I just don't think will be surprising. I have so many guesses as to how it's gonna work, meaning I don't think the cozy mystery aspect is gonna be particularly shocking. That said, I do actually like 𝗖cie. I think she's a really good foil character for Marigold. Everything about her also sort of just perfectly works for a character that I will love. She has a bit of a tragic backstory that has left her with a very cold exterior, but even by this point where a romance between these two still hasn't really developed, they're pretty early on in a friendship. There's little things you can see in how 𝗖cie acts to showcase she's not actually a bitch. I do like the dynamic they have, possibly because they're such opposites attract. Fun banter that's going on here. Queerness is totally normalized in their society, so I do appreciate the fact that it doesn't feel completely forbidden due to the time period, since it is, you know, historical. There is still a forbidden aspect of this because Marigold is not supposed to find love because she's the Honey Witch. She gave up that opportunity so she could have her power. I do think that it seems like feelings are developing between these two a little fast for my taste. However, the forced proximity and then the forbidden element just are tropes that work so well for me on top of the grumpy sunshine that I can't help myself. I'm really liking them and I'm already shipping them so hard. Honestly, I'm gonna estimate this at 4 stars. It's going pretty well for me. I have like a little few nitpicky things, but overall, I'm really enjoying this. Hey y'all, so I've officially finished out The Honey Witch by 𝗖cie J. and I did really like this. She writes atmosphere phenomenally. She kept it up throughout the entire book. Once again, have to equate it with like Erin Morgenstern's The Starless Sea or The Night Circus. Fantastic. Unfortunately, I was right when it came to the plot and Lottie's involvement. Nothing was really surprising. There weren't really any turns I didn't anticipate. Not like the most exciting, but at the same time, this is a very cozy book, so I don't think you're going into it expecting thriller, but I mean, it's also a little bit more satisfying when you don't totally expect every single twist. When it came to the relationship though, I did really like Lottie and Marigold by the end of this, and especially with Lottie, where you can see her perception on magic sort of shift from thinking it's a myth into something she's more convinced by. I thought that was well handled. With this being both forbidden romance and forced proximity, I really loved the fact that things drug out between these two a little bit. Like I said, the initial mention of feelings happened a little fast, but I was really glad for the fact that there was more to the story that kind of dragged things out, keeping them apart, but also amping up that tension. And that allowed me to become more invested, especially once the pining kicked up, and I became more and more enthralled with seeing these two finally having their happily ever after. With the Victorian-esque setting, it also made me cling to every prolonged touch more and more. I do still think I would have liked a little bit more time dedicated to that beginning shift from rivals to friends to lovers. There are a few things with the writing that I do think showcase this is the author's debut work. I can be a little clunky at times when it comes to world building or descriptions. Dialogue doesn't always flow authentically. The pacing also dragged a little bit in the middle, and then the ending was like breakneck. And there were one or two logistical issues I had when it came to the setup of the story, but this is also the first book that I would label as a romantasy and say that I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was whimsical, it was cozy, it was sweet. It came out to 4 stars. Not a new favorite, but I definitely will be keeping my eyes peeled for whatever 𝗖cie J. comes out with next. So unfortunately, that one was not a 5-star. But we're gonna keep rolling, we're gonna go on. And the next book I ended up picking up was one that I had high hopes for because it is actually the second in a series, and I really enjoyed the first one. That is The Kiss Curse by Erin Sterling. So this is the second book in the 𝗖cie series, and in this one we were following Gwen, the main character from the first book's cousin. Gwen loves everything about her life. She is starting to mentor some witches. She is helping her mom take care of their kitschy witch store, but unfortunately for her, the one thing she doesn't love is Wells Penhallow, who ends up moving in across the street and opening his own pretentious witchy store. But when Gwen's powers actually start to fade, Wells agrees to try and help her figure out what's going on. Hey guys, so I've hit the halfway point into The Kiss Curse, and if I am being honest, this is such a mid-romance when it comes to the actual romance in the book. Like, it is very much insta-lust, a very quick transition from not liking each other to working together. However, I'm having so much fun with it that I don't even really care. Sterling does comedy very well, and the atmosphere of this Halloween town little city in Georgia is just so perfect and enveloping that, again, I don't really care that the romance itself is so meh because everything else in this book is working really well for me. Both of our main characters don't have a ton of depth, honestly. Gwen is a sassy rule breaker. Wells is a grumpy traditionalist. Obviously, because of that, they butt heads a lot from the beginning. I guess you could argue Gwen is finally starting to, you know, settle down in her life, even though she's always been the rule breaker. And then on the opposite side, Wells is finally starting to sort of question this life he's led, always listening to what his father wants. But again, that's like very small potatoes in the grand scheme of this book. The banter, though, absolutely hilarious. These two are constantly poking and prodding at one another from the first scene, and that's how I knew it was gonna be a good time. And it is even more fun because they're also attracted to each other, but already we're sort of shifting away from that rivals element. Just shy of the halfway point, there's being this kind of magical mystery that's popping up, and off of my experience with the prior book in the series, I'm assuming it's probably not gonna be a huge thing. Obviously, it will become the thing to force these two to work together, but I don't think it's gonna be this like really exciting, fantastical part. Also, literally right before the halfway point. This had one of my favorite things in romantic stories, which is our two main characters are caught doing something they should not be doing, and in order to cover that up, one of them kisses the other. And I always love those scenes, especially when you know there's brewing feelings. They're so much fun in my opinion. Honestly, estimated rating, we're going with 4 stars. I don't think this is gonna be a new favorite, but I'm kind of considering going to buy a copy. I would love to reread this. It's hilarious so far. There's been some really funny moments, a talking cat, some great quips. It's going well. It is going well. Hi guys, so I finished out The Kiss Curse by Erin Sterling, and if I am being very honest, my thoughts on this book really did not change at all from my first update. Most of the relationship, the romance of the story is very much focused on the teasing and the sex. It is not especially deep, it is not especially romantic. That doesn't mean it's a bad book. As far as a romantic story goes though, I did appreciate the fact that the third act conflict is actually external. It is not due to our two characters not communicating. It's not because of some really silly grievance. And apart from that, though we're told like about a week has passed in story, from what like you're actually reading, they reconcile in a very short amount of time. Plus that reconciliation actually feels very mature. It doesn't feel like they're getting back together because one of them decided to make this grand gesture. It really feels like they're getting back together because they reevaluated what happened and realized, no, that's not something worthy of them giving up on this romance, which was really impressive given the fact that the rest of this book is very silly. So once again, the fantastical witchy plot, pretty minimal in comparison to like everything else going on in the book. It didn't require a lot of build up. Watch this realization finally hit, there's a climax, and then we move on. If I was really being critical, I would probably put this at like a 3.5 stars. It is a silly, fun, good time, but like I did have a really fun time reading this, just some of the silly situations these characters put themselves in. So I'm going to give it 4 stars, but again, it is very much based on entertainment value, and I'm intrigued to see what comes up with the third book in this series. We get a little bit more time dedicated to the third brother, Bowen, who's going to have his romance in the last book. I don't feel particularly strongly about him in any way, shape, or form, but I love the fact that Gwen basically insists that he is a werewolf because he is so hairy. So also not a 5-star, but at least it was pretty comparable to the first book, and the third book will actually be coming out this October, so I will be keeping my eyes peeled. On a very different note, I decided to pick up the next one because I've heard nobody ever talk about this book, and the plot of it sounds like a good time. That is Black Witch Magic by Mila Nix. So in this one, we are following Celine Blackstone, who is a witch, but she is actually pretty quiet, very much keeps to herself, and really just wants to spend her every day working at the library she loves. However, her grandmother's reputation in this town is making that a little bit difficult for her. Then on the opposite side, we have a paranormal investigator, Aiden, who actually comes to the town in order to investigate the mystery around Celine's grandmother. Unfortunately for him, he ends up swooning over Celine, and things get a little complicated. Hey y'all, so I've hit the halfway point into Black Witch Magic. Have not typed out any thoughts. Going to be doing this off the cuff, so have a lot of fun with this, editing that. Thus far, I am enjoying this. I do think when it comes to certain elements of the writing, it showcases that this is an early work from the author. I don't think this was her debut book, but I think it was like her second book she published. There will be little things when it comes to the dialogue, for example, where it doesn't flow naturally. Certain inconsistencies in the characters, specifically when we flip perspectives. That said, I do like both our main characters. I think the author's still done a good job of establishing the character, their personality, the dynamics they have with some people in their life. So we see a lot of each of their best friends. Aiden works on this paranormal hunter show, very reminiscent to like BuzzFeed Unsolved, with his best friend Eddie. And then Celine has a coven with her best friend Noelle and Noelle's aunt. I was not anticipating that this book, for being a witchy romance, was actually gonna be set at Christmas time. I'm still having a fun time. I do think the author's done a good job with the Christmas atmosphere, particularly in Aiden's perspective, because he's staying with his best friend Eddie's family, and his family has all of these like Christmas traditions they enjoy doing, whereas Aiden is very much a Scrooge. He's a Grinch. Of course, I really enjoy the fact that both of these characters are pretty bookish. I wouldn't quite call their interactions banter in this, rather they play off each other very well. And I am only at the halfway point, so I'm not totally convinced these two are falling in love, but I do believe they have a massive crush on one another, and seeing as how they've gone on 3 dates, Not surprising. At the same time, there's also this paranormal mystery that's taking place. Obviously, Aiden is a paranormal investigator investigating into the Blackstone family, this family known as witches, and like what actually happened in the past. Peter, this man that 𝗖cie was supposed to go on a blind date with at the beginning of the book, ends up in a coma in a very similar way to the man that Luna was romantically involved with in the prologue chapter. But everybody in the town thinks 𝗖cie and her family are the ones behind all of these weird happenings. Aiden, being the skeptic of the paranormal investigators, also isn't really believing that she is behind everything or even that she's a witch. That aspect has definitely led to some really funny situations. I do have a few qualms when it comes to like the writing and the character presentation, but overall, I'm actually really enjoying this. I am having a fun time with it. It's really silly and cute. It kind of makes me think of like a witchy version of like One for the Money. The halfway point right now, I think I would estimate like a 4-star. If this sticks the landing in the latter half, I'll probably continue the series. Hello, my loves. So I finished out Black Witch Magic by Mila Nix, and I really liked this. This is really like the perfect book for transitioning from Halloween into Christmas times. This isn't the most enveloping romance I've ever read, but I did learn that the rest of the series actually continues to follow Aiden and 𝗖cie. So my guess is every novel is like the next step in their relationship, meaning that this book is still early stages. This is still very much like initial crush, that first date jitters, and then the honeymoon stage. And this did sell me on that. I think that realization made me enjoy the story more because I didn't think I was supposed to believe they were in love by the end of this. It might have started a little rocky, but they're doing pretty well by the end of the book. I love the fact that 𝗖cie's a witch and Aiden was the skeptic in the paranormal investigators. I just thought that part was so much fun and led to some very entertaining scenes, but also some like really entertaining thought processes on Aiden's part. Fantasy-wise, as far as magic goes, it's very hand-wavy. Like there's a little bit of explanation there, but not too much. However, I do wonder if perhaps the author's gonna dive into the magic more as the series continues, because in this one, 𝗖cie explains she doesn't really understand her magic that well. Her mother really tried to ignore their magic and just live a normal life. So 𝗖cie has always had this disconnect from it. And I do think it would be very cool to see how her relationship with her magic evolves throughout the series. So yes, I am planning to continue the series. I also realized in the second half of the book that the way the town treats 𝗖cie due to her family name and this whole curse and the like evil witches aspect is definitely a great metaphor for racism and microaggressions that 𝗖cie unfortunately has to live with. So I thought the author did a really great job of weaving that commentary into the magical plot line. And then the mystery element also sort of ties into that as well. I don't want to say anything too specific because of spoilers. I do think I could have done with some more fleshing out of the side characters. I really liked the little bits we saw of them in the beginning, but towards the latter half of the book, Noelle didn't really grow at all and Eddie kind of took a back seat. And then I guess I also would have liked a little bit more from the mystery. But again, this was a really cute, fun read. I'm planning on continuing the series. This came out to a solid 4 stars. I'm very excited to see where it goes next. Okay, so I know the whole point of this video is supposed to be a 5 by 5, but honestly, not super mad that all of these keep coming out to really high 4 stars. So with that, I was highly anticipating the next book, which was The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by sangu mandanna. This one does technically have a romance, but really my interest for it sparked from the comparisons to House on the Cerulean Sea. And whenever my friend Kat heard that, she also absolutely had to read it. Ended up annotating a copy for me, so I was really excited going into this one. We are following Mika Moon, who is a witch and has been raised to believe that witches can't really congregate. They're not allowed to live together because they garner too much magic and it starts to draw attention. However, Mika does live a little bit of an unusual life in which she makes YouTube videos utilizing her magic, but of course people think it's just editing tricks. Through these videos, Mika is approached by somebody asking her to come to this mysterious house and actually help train these 3 younger witches. Once meeting the girls, she agrees to do so, but the prickly and very handsome librarian Jamie is a bit of a bonus.
Hello my friends, so I've hit the halfway point into the very secret society of irregular witches, and I'm filming this update now because I want to keep reading this book and I'm on vacation and I don't know if I'll get another chance, but this is going phenomenally. It definitely is very much warm hugs in a book vibe. I really like our main character Mika, who unfortunately is just so insanely lonely, has led a very lonely life, and now she's finally getting the opportunity to feel at home somewhere, to make a little family for herself, and it is just wonderful. It is so sweet. The dynamics between all the characters in this book are fantastic. We've got like an older queer couple who one of them keeps wanting to get involved in this whole situation and trying to force a romance, while as the other one is like trying to tell him let things happen naturally, relax, it's fine. We've got the three little girls who one's a bit of a troublemaker, one is very dedicated to Mika already, and the other is just really inquisitive and curious, trying to learn about her own power. And then we have our grumpy librarian Jamie, who also has a bit of a mysterious backstory, but he cares so much for the kids. Literally seeing him with the kids in comparison to like how he interacts with Mika at the start is just so drastically different, and I do love that about him. I mean, I love a grumpy character, and then seeing a grumpy character interact with children, being a sweetheart. Can you say Gordon Ramsay? I am all over it. Though his relationship with Mika started very rough because he is so protective of the girls. He doesn't want to take a chance that something worse could happen by bringing another witch here, but the more they interact, the better things are getting. He's starting to learn more about her and starting to understand her, and I love that he's like annoyed by that fact. It's very funny. However, because he doesn't trust her, it's still leading to some reservations with some of the girls, namely the oldest one, and Mika isn't afraid to call him out on that, which I really appreciate. And now, just at the halfway point, it seems like that's truly going to be coming to a head. I'm so excited. I want to read more of this. That's why I'm filming this. I did not type up any of my thoughts. This is just me spewing all my love at you because this is going so well. I'm a little annoyed at myself that I took this long to read this book. I'm also reading a version that was annotated for me by my best friend Catherine, and honestly, I mean, when you get scenes like this, it just makes the whole reading experience even better. The witchiness, it's very soft magical realism more so. As I said, the main focus of the story is much more like family feel good. The romance is not it, but it's still there. Like from the first interaction between these two characters, you can tell that like something is getting set up, something is building, and I do feel like it's actually been convincingly done, even though a lot of the rest of the story it's focused on Mika finding her place and like training these little girls, helping them be more comfortable with their magic abilities. A lot's going on, but I think the author's doing a really great job of keeping that all consistent and working it all together, weaving this really sweet story. I'm loving it. I know I'm probably like one of the last people to be reading this and spewing my love for it, but I get it. I finally get it. I do. It's so good.
Hey y'all, so I've officially finished out the very secret society of irregular witches. Unfortunately, I don't have my copy anymore. I did give it to my friend Allie to annotate next, but I loved this. I'm mad at myself for taking so long to get to it because this was fantastic. It really was a warm hug of a book. Don't think the plot did anything too surprising. Literally every time a twist would take place, it was something I did expect. There was one that caught me off guard. I think I probably could have predicted it if I'd been paying more attention, but I was just having such a great time with the family feel-good things that were happening in this story. The romance itself, feelings that we see develop between Jamie and Mika were convincing. I totally was sold on them. I thought they were so cute, very opposites attract energy, but really, I mean, seeing Jamie interact with the girls was just some of my favorite parts of this book. He was such a grump, but yet he loved these girls so much and was so willing to protect them. It was fantastic. But when we see his hesitancy to trust Mika finally come back and bite him in the ass, it was terrible that I had a great time with it, but I did. It was so freaking good. I literally don't have anything else to say about it apart from I loved it. 5 freaking stars. I definitely will be checking out Sangu Mandanna's next witchy romance. I think it recently got pushed back, unfortunately, but it's supposed to be coming out in March of 2025, and I can't wait. So happy this one ended up being a 5-star. I also had a really great time annotating it. The last book actually kind of got slid in here for convenience sake because it was for my Buns and Roses TBR jar challenge, which I'll link to the playlist up above if you're unaware of what I'm talking about. But one of those books I ended up reading was Full Moon Over Freedom by Angelina M. Lopez. This one is a second chance romance in which we are following Jillian and Nick, who were friends with benefits at high school and end up reconnecting as adults when Jillian returns home running away from a really ugly divorce. To make a little bit of money, she ends up taking on the role of trying to procure this grant that her family is trying to bring to their town to improve this street that the family bar is actually housed on. Another way they're trying to improve the town is by having Nick, who is a famous artist, come in and paint a mural. So unfortunately, Jillian and Nick kind of get forced into working with each other. Oh, I guess I should also mention the witch aspect of this. So Jillian is a bruja and believes that the turn of bad luck in her life is due to a curse. She also, for years, has been able to hear La Llorona calling for her children. I didn't really know what to expect going into this one, seeing as how I'd never heard anybody talk about it, but I was excited by the prospect.
Hey guys, so I have surpassed the halfway point into Full Moon Over Freedom, and I'm really liking this. Jillian is like peak oldest sister personality. I actually really like getting to have an older main character who's dealing with some more mature issues. She's in the middle of a pretty nasty divorce. She's trying to take care of her children. I also appreciate the representation. Her son has autism, though it is stated that he's high functioning, which isn't really a term used nowadays, but the way the representation so far is being done doesn't feel infantilizing. Then as someone in the financial field, I did think it was very interesting that Jillian herself is a financial advisor, and kind of to hear her thoughts, financials of Latin families and kind of the differences in those households compared to white families. Even the drama around her family's bar, which I found out is apparently like a continuation from the events of the first book. I also am really enjoying that. The romance itself, my kind of setup. The big issue for me is the lack of honesty that is going on in this book. Part of that is from Jillian. She does kind of cause some of her own issues because she is bottling up everything she's dealing with. She won't open up about it to her family, and it does make sense for the personality we're seeing from this character. It is officially starting to make her own issues even worse. She's blaming herself for pretty much everything bad that's going on around her, which means Nick's not really helping the case whenever he kind of makes her think they're engaging in an affair. Let me be clear, no actual cheating happens in this book. It's clarified pretty quickly that Nick said he was engaged in order to kind of have a buffer between the two of them, because he knows if he lets her in again, it's just gonna end with him in heartbreak. God, I got tired of that so quickly. I'm over it. I'm completely over it. I'm literally begging for him to tell her the truth. And that issue right there honestly makes this story feel a little bit immature than it probably should with characters that are on the older side. The witch elements of this are pretty light, honestly, but they are still definitely there. Jillian has been able to hear and see La Llorona for as long as she can remember, and apparently she's the only one in her family that can. Nicky and his brother were attacked by something that can only really be described as like the Grimm, and his brother unfortunately has been able to see paranormal things ever since then, and it's haunted him for years. Recently, Nick's brother actually ended up passing from addiction issues, so do just want to slide that out there if you need the trigger warning. Jillian's grandmother, her mother, and herself all practice brujeria, which is kind of described in like a mix of Mexican paganism, Catholicism, and self-determination, which I really liked that. I'm enjoying this. I am. It's just like the lack of honesty is driving me up a wall. I'm gonna estimate like 3.5. If that gets handled here soon, maybe it'll get better, because again, so much of this book I'm really liking. That aspect makes me want to throw it at a wall though.
Hey guys, so I officially finished out Full Moon Over Freedom by Angelina M. Lopez. I really liked this. I did. There were a few things that just they bugged me too much for me to rate it a 5-star. I will say, I actually really like how Jillian's storyline was wrapped up in the end. Her job, her divorce, taking care of her children, the romance, her family drama, her magic, all of that. It felt like it came together really well. I was very impressed at how Lopez managed to make everything work out okay, and it didn't feel too hallmarky. I mean, it definitely is a bit of a hallmark with more steam. I'm still irritated about how much miscommunication was utilized in the first half of the book, but thankfully they finally talked things out not long after I made that first update. Then I do think once they finally kind of took the jump, they were really open with each other. They felt like they had a more open line of communication, which did make this seem a little bit more mature, as I was wanting. I also really liked Nick. I feel like his background, his traumas got more attention in the latter half of the book. Finally got to learn more about him, more about his backstory, and like the ties he has to the paranormal, and I did appreciate that as well. And with those, I thought the third act conflict on this was going to be external. I thought it was going to be more wrapped up in Jillian's divorce, honestly. And it was. But at the same time, conflict also does arise because of Nick. It's based in things from his past, which do make sense. Does it make it less irritating? It kind of felt like a stretch after everything we just watched them go through, everything we just watched them work out together in order to try and make this work. And then finally, this was steamy. I would probably say like 3, maybe 4 chili peppers. It got pretty spicy. I actually think this author can write smut very well. However, there was certain terminology that was used. A certain word was repetitively used in a dirty context that just, I don't want to be there. It feels so uncomfortable. And so anytime it was utilized, I got taken out of the story because of those issues. I could not give this 5 stars, unfortunately, but it was a strong 4-star. And there was enough stuff mentioned here that I am intrigued to go back and try the first book in the series. Seeing as how there's a 3rd sister as well, I'm curious on whether or not the author is planning to write a 3rd book.
And on that note, we did not have a 5/5. But honestly, I'm not gonna complain because every book in this video was 4 stars and higher. That's fantastic. I didn't have any DNFs. That's always a big plus as well. So, you know, not a 5/5. We're still trying, but at the very least, this was a great video. This is like probably, if not the most successful, like the 2nd most successful video I've had. Ironically, the ones I come out with in October always tend to do really well. I don't know what it is about that. On that note, that is it for today, y'all. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, leave me a broom emoji in the comments. I have all my socials as well as a few ways you can support me linked in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!